5th, 2024. Administrator Chansky, call the roll.
Ball. Jensen.
Present.
Maroney.
Present.
Scott.
Present.
And Zierden.
Present. All right, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get an approval or amendment of the agenda?
Madam Mayor, if I may request, provided the council in front of you, as well as earlier this evening, is a Resolution 08-2024. It's a resolution supporting the efforts of Ideal Township to improve their transfer station. This is something that Ideal Township has asked if we would submit this resolution of support, as they are going to be pursuing some grant funding to improve the transfer station. Unfortunately, it was something that we had spoken about, and then they reminded me after the agenda went out. So if the council's willing, I would appreciate if it could be added as, I think, under new business, it'd be appropriate as 10A if the council is willing. Oh, 10D, sorry, 10D.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended with 10D being added.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now can I please get a motion to approve the amended agenda? Or was that?
That was
That was it? Okay,
Yep.
perfect. All right, so we will go ahead and open up tonight for open forum. So if anyone has anything they would like to come up and discuss, please do state your name and your address.
Bill Toft, Greenstein Drive, Breezy Point, Minnesota. I must talk about two different unrelated issues tonight. I'll be real brief because I know you guys get a long agenda. First of all, I appreciate you sending out the 27-page document about what's going to be on the ballot. That was really informative. And I guess I didn't have a chance to take a look at all of it, but the part I did see that I thought if we didn't have this extra cash laying around and we had to issue general obligation bonds, then we would be able to vote on this project. It's only because we've been overtaxed so much over the last several years that we have this extra cash balance. And it's the whole state's that's doing it. The whole state, Thinking Minnesota issue came out today. They're talking about a $729 million office addition that they're going to be putting up. Interesting times we're in. The First Amendment allows us to have our opinions about issues. It does not allow you to lie about somebody in public. And last meeting, somebody was up here and told was one thing he said that was truthful. And one of the areas where he said I had a witness there when he came into the grocery store or out of the grocery store and approached me, and he said I screamed at him, wouldn't let him leave, and yelled at him. The witness was there during all this. And he was kind enough to send me a statement, which I'm going to read. In September 2023, I bumped into Bill Toft at the Super Value after we both checked out our groceries. I had met Bill at the gym and have developed a casual relationship. As we headed for the door and exchanged pleasantries, I also mentioned to him that I was sorry to read in the local newspaper that he was tangled up in a complicated situation with a disc golf group at Breezy Point. Literally at that moment, as we were about to exit the store, another man reached the entrance to the store. Bill said, "He's the disc golf guy." The man immediately started talking to Bill in an emotionally charged manner, accusing Bill of never giving the disc golf group any chance. Bill remained calm and respectful. I felt very uncomfortable with the gentleman's aggressive tone. I excused myself and bid farewell to Bill since it was no business of mine. I did apologize to Bill the next time I saw him at the gym, wondering if I should have stayed and watched this discourse from my truck in the parking lot just to make sure that he had walked away safely. I'm not going to give this gentleman's name because I don't want to subject him to the same irrationality behavior that I've been subjected to. I'm just going to finish here by saying the next day I filed a police report on this matter with the Pequot Lakes Police Department because I felt he was just trying to provoke me. Hopefully this will be the end of this kind of discussion here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Right. Anybody else?
Tom Lawhigh, 7460 Fairway Lane, Breezy Point. A lot has been talked about our surplus of cash that we have in hand. I thought I'd give a little history as to how we got there. Way back in the early 2000s, Breezy Point had a very aggressive road building program. They bonded for all of those roads. And when I became mayor, those bonds were starting to come due. At that point, our debt service was very large. We had a lot of debt service that we were paying off. And as a result, road maintenance was not getting done. So I made the decision, it was my decision, so if you want somebody to blame, blame me. And I said, any bond that we finish paying off, we're not going to lower the levy. We are going to put that towards roads, towards capital improvement, and we would move on to having basically a pay-as-you-go, avoid bonding. The first thing that came up is we bought a dump truck for $200,000 and we paid cash for it. Excuse me. If we would have bonded, that truck would have cost us over $300,000. So by building up that capital reserve and paying cash for things as we went, we were saving a whole lot of money. So that's really good use of taxpayers' money. I don't want to spend $300,000 for a $200,000 item. That went on for my entire term as mayor, and when I finished, Breezy Point was debt-free. For a city our size to be totally debt-free was absolutely phenomenal. And that's why we have this cash reserve. And like I say, if you want to blame somebody, blame me, but this is how it's paying off. So if we want to do Bushman Road, if we want to do City Hall, we can do a lot of that in cash. Because of all of those expenditures, we're probably going to have to do some bonding, but because Bushman is going to be very expensive. But that's how we can pay for the City Hall, because we thought ahead of the time, saying we want to, build a new City Hall eventually. We thought about it way back when. And by having that cash reserve in hand, we are saving a lot of money. So having that cash reserve is saving taxpayer money. It's just straight dollars and cents.
I want to say thank you, first off, because I think that a lot of times it is easy to look back and say, oh, well, I would have made a different choice, right, if I were doing this. And I want to let you know, me personally, I do not believe that we have been overtaxing. I think there is value in putting money aside. So I don't think that you have anything to feel guilty for, or there's no one to blame. I appreciate that you can come up here and at least give us like the why, but I think that that is an indication of a true leader. So I just want to say thank you for
Like I say,
the service that you've done and the fact that you're able to come up here and do that.
the road building program they did back in the early 2000s was very aggressive. It was very expensive. And consequently, as a result of that, we had to make the choice of cutting things that we would normally be doing. You build a lot of roads, you got a lot more maintenance to do, and we couldn't afford the maintenance. So the roads were actually deteriorating, and which is why when the first bond got done, I said, okay, what we were spending on that debt service, we're going to put directly into roads. And so then we were able to do the chip sealing, the road repairs and stuff. So,
Thank you.
but that was my decision, and if you want somebody to blame, blame me.
I don't blame you. I thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Does anyone else have anything for open forum? All right, we will go ahead and close open forum and move on. I will have Sandy come up and give her presentation.
Sandy Loughlin, Ranchette Drive. I'm here again about the garden. The council I want to back up just a little bit. We've been working on this for 2 years. I came to the council, I think it was about 2 years ago, to request, a city garden on this property here. And it's been, kind of gone back and forth, and I realize things take time. But I think we gave most of the information that you needed, which was the preliminary plans, the contracts for gardeners, the rules and regulations. I had said that I would manage it if you wanted me to for a couple of years till we could get things up and going. But that the council then had a few more questions. And the director of the Cross Lake Community Garden couldn't make it. So he sent me an email with some of these questions answered. And when I read the answers, you'll understand the question, I'm sure. And this is all Cross Lake information. The community garden there was established in 2012 with a total of 44 plots. In 2016, the city staff and a group of volunteers expanded the garden. In total, 17 more plots and 6 raised beds were added. We have a few individuals on the wait list, however, they don't intend to expand at this point. So it did grow over that time. The desire was there. There is a foundation in Cross Lake called PAL, which it's a 501(c), and it is the fiscal agent for the community garden. Revenue generated from the annual plot fees are put back into the ongoing maintenance of the gardens, hoses, plot markers, fence repair, water line repairs, walkway resurfacing, equipment repair, purchase, etc. And let's see, there is no cost to the city other than performing maintenance tasks. Maintenance tasks include collecting disposal of weeds and garbage at the pickup site, occasional covering of neglected plots, resurfacing walkways every 1 to 2 years, tilling the plots in the fall. Rare maintenance items include fence repair, water line repair, raised bed maintenance. In the past, we set up a program where gardeners could purchase a half-yard scoop of fresh compost. My staff would deliver the scoops to their plots. Our community garden guidelines specifically list what the gardener is responsible for, and we can revert back to their documents, the rules and regulations of their garden. The community garden has proven to be a valuable asset within our park system and community. And in full disclosure, he said, there are 2 management challenges that we often encounter every year. A registration process, which is receiving payment, getting registrations before the deadline, communication with gardeners and those on the wait list, and difference in gardeners' expectations in relation to their neighbor's garden and how it impacts their own garden. And he said, if you have any other questions, we could contact him again. I guess at this point, I would like to ask the council to make a decision to look to the future with a vision for this area, where our hope for the city garden would be in this area behind City Hall. One of the things I think in this community is that we don't have a town center. And this area with a new City Hall and library and community center, or not community center, I didn't mean that. Well, no. In addition to what Parks and Rec is hoping someday may go here in future plans, that this could be a great community gathering place where people can connect in our community. And a community garden would be an incredible addition to that, I believe. And with that, if you have any other questions? No? No? I ask that, if we could at least get if you will move forward, we could get a designated spot, designate the location. Because if you do that, we can look for grants, we can go fundraise, we can do things to try to help cover the costs of this garden. I would like to be able to do that without city funds, but we need to have the city funds to at least have the availability to move forward. But the plan is to definitely try to do this without using those funds.
Sandy, I have a question.
Yeah.
In regards to Park and Rec, they're redoing the master plan.
Yes.
I know the community garden has been talked about. I watch, the replays on YouTube. What's Parks and Rec's stance? Are you going to finish the master plan and then select projects? Because the council allocated 50,000
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah, right now, I think where we're at is the final phase of that plan. I think most of the things are in there. And we just kind of reworded a few things. The community garden is definitely on there, definitely. It's part of the plan. So, and the other, I don't want to really speak for Parks and Rec up here. I'm speaking as a resident. So, I hate to go too far into that, but it is on the plan.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Thanks for your time.
Thank you. All right, so we will move on to the consent agenda.
All right, Madam Mayor, 7A, items.
Oh, I'm
items of
sorry.
interest.
Yeah, the most important part of the night. So we will go ahead. Who is presenting first? for that?
I'll kick it off, Madam Mayor. So this is items kind of a follow-up, obviously, from our workshop on January 23rd, where the design for the proposed new city hall was presented. After a few questions were raised, one of the things that the council discussed that they would like to see as we come back today was a couple of things, is to see what would a proposal for a remodel and expansion design for the existing city hall might look like. So that is in here. I'm gonna let Lindsay and Mike speak to that. And then prior to kind of deciding whether or not you want to at least have the discussion, what does that proposal look like, and discuss, do you want to pursue that kind of a proposal before you decide whether or not to move forward into construction documents and bidding on the new city hall. So that proposal is attached. I'll let Lindsay and Mike go through it quickly. I think ultimately, the direction we'd be looking forward for you tonight is whether or not to proceed with development of construction documents and bidding for the proposed new city hall, or if you would like to pivot and have the approve this proposal and have a remodel and expansion design conducted that we bring back in March, and then for you to review both options prior to making a decision. So with that, I'll invite Mike or Lindsay, if any of you wants to just speak on the proposal.
You bet. Thank you, everybody, Madam Mayor and City Council. Really here just to answer any questions that you may have regarding our proposal, but as Mr. Chansky made mention of at the last meeting at the workshop, it was tasked for us to go back and provide a proposal to potentially have a remodel and addition. So really the key thing there is we're proposing that we would do that within the month of February, come back to you in the next City Council meeting in March. And that way, based on that decision, there potentially could be an opportunity to finish up with construction documents and get out for bid yet this spring. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have regarding our proposal.
And Madam Mayor, if I may really quickly also add, as I put in my email to the council following the workshop as well as in the packet, one of the key items that is in the proposal is that, as you now have your discussion, is that if you do choose to move down this path and execute this proposal, is to give us some parameter of one of the reasons you talked about looking at this was a cost estimate of, we had about 4.2 million is the 70% cost estimate. That's full in building, construction, FF&E design, all of that. And so the concern was, again, that cost of, okay, what would a remodel cost look like? And one of the things I think we're looking for as a design team would actually be some parameters of, a budget. In the packet, I listed my reasonings for, looking at least 3 million. But again, we're looking to hear from you, if we choose to go down this, what are the parameters, so that we know, as a design team working on that design, what we have to work with.
Is anyone else presenting anything tonight, or is it just kind of like you and Lindsay are here to answer questions as we
here to
deliberate?
answer
Okay,
questions.
okay.
One question I have is the information
Like I said.
we received from David was that yourself and Scott were moving away from, there's a remodel of City Hall, but you wanted to build, let's call it the administrative piece, new because of fears of, or structurally in this building. I mean, can you elaborate or what? And I would like, Scott to speak on that as well.
Yeah, certainly can. So after the workshop, Mr. Sadusky and a few of us talked about that. And so really what we wanted to just establish for ourselves was thinking about the project conceptually where we're keeping costs to a minimum. Of course, with that, what can we control? Well, we can control the amount of work that would occur with the existing structure. So in previous projects that I've worked on, when you want to accomplish that, oftentimes what you'll do is you will intentionally have a portion of the addition be designed and constructed in such a way that it creates a clear separation structurally between the two. And what that allows is from a potential fire separation, a rated wall, and then as well as you are not superimposing additional loads on the existing structure, as well.
Okay.
And so with this structure, it's elevated above grade. So from an accessibility standpoint, it might offer us up some flexibility there as well. So that with the addition, you would be able to essentially have slab on grade, no accessibility issues or exterior ramps like you currently have. And then from a code standpoint, really taking a look at this building where if we essentially don't do a whole lot to that, that then frees up a lot of the, the cost, in terms of allocating that more towards what you really need. So if this is maybe potentially the community asset that we're in currently, maybe that's just how it's viewed, and if we don't change the use, then from a cost standpoint and scope of work, we're controlling that. And so again, as Mr. Chansky made mention of, from a budget standpoint, for us to, be able to discuss that at the outset of us potentially moving forward with schematic design on this design option, that'd be wonderful. If we could do that, we'll design to that budget. Again, as we were speaking after the workshop, those are things that immediately came out from that just brief conversation that we had back there. And, again, Mr. Sadowski was part of that. And it was healthy conversation, sketching out some ideas. But, that's certainly a route that we will potentially take.
But also there was 600,000 in fees for the remodel of this, if I remember correctly. Is that not a true statement?
So I can speak to that. So that was based off of just a remodel figure that we received from High Tech. So if you took the 4,000 square feet times 135 square feet, that's kind of where we got
So
it.
that's where that was based off of, just strictly the
Yep.
remodel cost.
Yeah,
And that's not, again, and I think as Scott can speak to, that's very also dependent on what this building is used for. If we keep it mostly the same and we don't have to make a lot of changes versus if the use significantly changes, and Scott can speak to that, if we have to sprinkle or do other things, that might change that. So it is a little bit dependent on what this building actually becomes.
So if it was just a community room, then you don't have to put in sprinkler systems? I mean, you can.
I'll let Scott speak to that.
If it's attached to that other building, well then, yeah, we're gonna sprinkle all of it.
Okay.
That's required at that point. If you don't change the use of this room though, everything's grandfathered in. But, and Mike's being pretty humble, but so after the last meeting, I'm like, all right, what other options? I said, if you were really to do an addition, and rather than looking at the addition where we're bumping out that side
Sure.
and that side, I go, what's the most cost-effective way of doing it? And he said, put a lobby right here, and then the administration on the other side. And then I'm like, well, that's genius, because now we don't have to shut down this one. We're getting a new administration building that will fit the parameters of what David needs for his staff, and yet we're not gonna really alter too much what we're doing. It's kind of a split down the middle. And that was Mike's idea more than it was mine. But I just thought it was a really smart way of doing it because we're not gonna interrupt services here whatsoever.
I would agree 100%. I mean, that was a big drawback to building a standalone.
Correct.
New, I mean, 18 months in construction trailers is a big interruption in city services. what if you had a combination council chambers and community room, you use this dual purpose, is that still grandfathered in?
It's still the same occupancy, yeah.
Okay. And the reason I ask it, per dollar figure, it's a lot cheaper. I mean, the council chambers is 2,800 square feet. Now you figure that times, what is it, 3.25 for a new build versus 135 for a remodel, you're still getting the access. It's reducing costs, but the administrative wing, I mean, it should be new. It's not functional for the staff, just the way it's laid out. So, okay.
The other thing I want to bring up, Councilman Jensen, is that we talked about this existing building. We just don't know what we're getting into. I'm not saying that there's any structural issues or anything like that. In fact, you don't see a lot of cracks in the drywall or anything like that. I don't think structurally there's probably a lot wrong. It's just remodeling this building alone, is that going to fit the use of what the city needs now and then in the future? That's the big question here.
And I like to actually segue into that, because I think what we need to do is kind of get out of the weeds of, some of these littler details and into the bigger vision of the city of Breezy Point. I've spent a lot of time, actually over the last week, I handed out these packets to every one of you. There's a bigger vision rather than just it being this dollar for dollar of a new build versus a remodel. And when you look at the demographics of Breezy Point and how much it has changed over the last 10 years, I was just on the phone today with a new resident. She is pregnant with her 4th baby. They have 3 under 3, so they're gonna have 4 under 4 in June. They moved here from Colorado, and they have no access to childcare. There's no childcare. And in your packet, and this is where I wanna go down the road of childcare, because I think that when we make decisions like this, it is not just looking at the dollar. It's not saying, well, we want to spend less and we want to, make sure that we're not spending as much as we can. We have to look at who are we really serving. So I actually dug deep into the childcare, and I, in this study, actually our zip code 56472 Pequot Lakes, which includes Jenkins and Breezy, we are number 2 behind Brainerd for lack of childcare, and we have over 200 children that do not have access to childcare in our district. And with that being said, I was on the phone with the mayor of Hills, Minnesota. They took a city-owned building, over 4,000 square feet, so bigger than this building. They were able to get funding, over $100,000, not only from the county, but from DEED, who actually their regional commission wrote that grant. He's on the board of it, as am I for this. They were able to put 3 different pods of childcare in there and offer over 40 different childcare openings in a town of 600 people. If we were able to do that with this building, we would be offering almost 50 openings for childcare. And so when you look at, again, the long-term needs of the city of Breezy, it is not just about what are we looking at today, it's what are we looking at 20 to 30 years from now. And if we have an opportunity to build, just like Mayor Lillehei had said, back then, when they bought a $200,000 dump truck that they didn't want to pay $300,000 for, it's no different from the city hall that we're looking at. We're looking at a brand new commercial building at $300 a square foot, which is an amazing price point. And now we're looking at the needs. So I really want us to not just look at the dollar for dollar and look at the demographics and how they're changing in this city, because there's plenty of people who live in the city of Breezy who have needs that their needs are not represented in this room because they don't have time to come with their babies to speak at this podium. And I will continue to speak with more residents and bring more information. I have a meeting in Hackensack with the First Children's Finance. They actually were the ones that work with cities for free. Actually, they're willing to come here, work with us to actually look at the need for our city so that we can make this happen. The Initiative Foundation is also another grant funder. We have someone who is a Breezy Point resident here tonight who actually works for the Initiative Foundation. So the partnerships that we can bring into this city to fulfill needs of our residents goes far beyond just looking at dollar for dollar of a new build versus an addition. And just like Sandy said, Sandy also has come to the point of a vision, right? Why wouldn't we have a new city hall? Why wouldn't we have a community garden here? Why can't this be the epicenter of Breezy Point? We have had that conversation for so long that we have no center place for the city, the residents to come, to have events, to, really bring us all together as a community. And for me, I think that we need to really start looking at the vision and the forward thinking of the city and what that entails and the partnerships and the things that we can offer to our residents that we haven't actually looked at before, which is why I 100% don't think that we should be spending $30,000 to go look at the expansion and addition when I would rather give that $30,000 for Sandy to go start her community garden, because I think it will touch a lot more people. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I'll also tell you too that something I haven't done is I'm also in talks of a partnership with the community center, right? Instead of I've never been for taxpayer-only funded community center, but I've been talks with the school and the resort. Because if we were to do a community center, why wouldn't we want to allocate dollars from the referendum for their activities, athletic activities, to actually combine that to create a community center that also could be operationally run by the resort, should we choose to do that? So I think that, there's all these things that are what ifs, and I understand that we don't have everything down, but I honestly think we really need to look at what the vision is and where we need to go in the city. So that's kind of what, I have been working on in the last couple months, because I think it is important. And I think that forward thinking is something that we need to consider.
Well, I would say I disagree. I think we should look at the remodel and expansion design plan. I don't think we need to spend $4.2 million on a new city hall. At this point, I think we can accomplish functionality and have an amenity for the community, whether it be a community room solely or council chambers and a community room. So I guess I'm opposed to spending $4.2 million on a new city hall.
Well, I certainly find it refreshing to hear mention of things like vision. That was something that over a year ago, when some of us took our seats for the first time, I was anticipating and otherwise hoping for. That as a council, we would be getting into discussions around community priorities, engaging the public in an effort, and really setting goals, short, medium, and long range. And I continue to feel like here we are, we've got a lot of very aggressive needs in front of us that are requiring a lot of money, and we largely have no plan. We have no plan for facilities for City Hall. I don't know about others, but I find it really hard to do much of anything without having a plan. Not the least of which is building a level of community synergy around what do we need? Is a remodeled City Hall sufficient for the next 5 to 10 years until we reevaluate, understand where we're at as a community at that point in time, and move a different direction? The one thing that I'm absolutely not in favor of is the city starting to get into the business of being a landlord and putting a level of responsibility on taxpayers, renting a city building for non-public purposes. There may be other cities out there that are doing things like that, but I would think of it as being pretty far and few between, that being the situation. As far as the proposal in front of us tonight and the cost, and a little bit this is going back, I think, to Steve's questions earlier. Just wondering, outside of the remodel, looking at a remodel and what that would require, why was there the addition included in that analysis? What were things that were moving the conversation in the direction of, you know what, let's not just look at the remodel. Let's actually look at, let's propose a remodel inclusive of this other additional building. Because that's the thing I'm still struggling with a little bit. I don't know why just looking at the city hall and a remodeling of it wouldn't be a good approach. We already understand largely what is going to be involved in the cost with a brand new build of a city hall. But we're kind of already there, right? So just maybe a little bit more on why the inclusion of the administrative wing.
What we included in addition with what our proposal was based on, as we went through the design process and met with the committee through schematic design and design development on the new building, we were able to confirm the amount of square footage and space that we needed based on a dedicated council chambers and city staff now, as well as city staff moving forward. So to answer your question, it's because we had identified some additional square footage that would be needed. And so after the workshop, I felt that the direction, right or wrong, was to propose that we would take a look at the current building as well as an addition to accommodate the needs that we had established throughout, again, the design development phase of the new city hall. So we're completely flexible. We can certainly take a look at repurposing this building in particular. As it states in the proposal, will work hand in hand with Mr. Sadusky in terms of what that scope looks like, and even to go as far as maybe some exploratory slight demolition to just try to get a better understanding of the building. But my impression or my takeaway after the workshop was that we would take a look at trying to accomplish what we did laying out the new city hall based on it. Again, the square footage needs the space needed for current and future staff, and also try to incorporate this building into that.
I do want to state too in the back of your guys' packets, and we will make this public, there is a design of Hills, Minnesota's design for their pod system for the daycare center. This is a 5-hour drive. The mayor is willing to drive up to meet with us should we decide to move forward with a new build and future consider some kind of childcare option. And also too, when I had called, they had said that they had many cities around the state of Minnesota calling them, asking for help on how to move through the process, because just relying on the state and county to address the needs of childcare is not an option. Actually, it is more functional to be able to address the needs of childcare, which is actually a national issue, that if we don't help address this on a city level, it's not going to get addressed. And so I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. I believe in utilizing relationships with other cities and areas that have made this very successful and have provided their residents with additional childcare that they wouldn't otherwise have. And again, you look at even the job market and how that stems into it. If you don't have childcare, you don't have workers. And if you don't have workers, you don't have functionality in your community. So at the end of the day, we have an opportunity to address something that is highly needed in this city amongst residents with young children who don't have childcare. And it even says in here for our zip code, we have 2 centers. 2. That's it. The wait list is super long. We have, I think it was 4 in-home. So again, I think that there are needs of residents whose voices are not in this room, and the voices of, they don't have the ability necessarily to, put this out there because they don't know what the answer is. And I think that, again, if we would be doing our residents a disservice by not at least looking into this option to service our community. So it is not far and few between. Actually, this model is becoming very popular across the state of Minnesota, and it's been very successful everywhere that it's been implemented.
I think with respect to the remodel and addition, I think I had the same concerns as Brad as far as the cost estimate going up to 3 million. But I understand that the square footage that's provided here, and the estimate is much larger than those estimates we had looked at initially when we had gotten the numbers at the workshop some months ago in May. For me, it's hard to justify a remodel and addition at $3 million. It's also hard to justify a new building at $4 million that looks the same as this building with just some more square footage, with no additional benefits. So I know I've said this many times, but if we're going to do a new building, I want some additional added benefits to residents of the city, like a gym with workout equipment or something like that, that justifies the added square footage, the cost to the city, and not just a new office building or a remodel of this one for 3 million. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at.
Did we put a price point on adding something like that in initially? Do you know? Like, let's just say we were to put a gym, like a small gym. We're not talking about like a pool in a community. We're just talking about something like smaller. Did we look at what that price point would be?
Yeah, I believe we did, as part of our schematic design with the new building.
It's
It
2
was
million.
2 or 4? I thought it was 4, 8, 8 with the pool, 4.
2 was about.
Was it? Okay, I was wrong.
What makes the gym 2 million? Just curious. I mean, besides what?
So what we had looked at also was the location of it, and it was going to be built into, if you recall, the grade going down. And so that had, with that, some more complicated structure involved with that. As far as with a gym, you've got long spans, so from a steel standpoint, it's a little bit more with all the gym equipment that you would potentially have in there. And I believe at the time we were thinking a walking track as well, like an elevated walking track for the residents. So in that instance, it was also in combination, or it was combined with the pool. So and then we also had some locker rooms in there, and then a separate entrance. So you know, the numbers I say reflected the design, which was to come straight off the east of the new building where it was located.
And that was a very high level estimate because we were not trying to get into the weeds. We just wanted to know what would it look like.
It was a ballpark square foot number,
Right.
yeah,
Yep.
at the time. Yep.
And again, what was the cost per square foot for new? It was
300.
300?
Yeah, for the new city hall.
Okay. And then the remodel was
135, I mean, that's a very high level number, you know, that not actually coming here and looking at the building, but that's just kind of the number that their working number that they do for most remodel projects is they start at 135 until they actually figure out what they're actually doing.
Again,
But that's only for this building, it's not for the addition that you.
Yeah, that would just be like taking this square footage, this physical building and doing interior remodels to it.
What was your vision, Councilwoman Ball, about the gym exactly? Like, was it, obviously they said 2 million, but that included the walking track and stuff. So if you were to like look at what benefit would, you know, we offer to residents with a gym, like what would that gym actually look like for you?
I mean, I think this was a while ago now, but we originally, when we had gotten, I don't know if it was a committee together to kind of talk about different features. I mean, there were millions of, well, not millions, but many different features that we had talked about. So, I mean, in my mind, it could be any number of those things. I mean, we talked about like a professional kitchen where you could actually have like community ed courses because you'd have a professional kitchen, and you can't do that if you don't. I mean, it doesn't have to be a giant gym with a walk-around track. I mean, Cross Lakes is nothing like that. It's just a gym. I also thought about like a very small in scale, like exercise room, like, I don't know, a few treadmills, a few ellipticals, some weights. I don't know. I think there's a lot of different options you could explore that would, be a start to something that could be a community center, but not just be a new building with, that's just this, but bigger. There's nothing specific in mind. Obviously, a lot of talk around the pool and like a gym. I think we're huge, libraries already kind of built into the design, because I know that was talked about a lot, and then a community center. But I think there were a lot of other things too that could have been looked at. Or maybe like you said, like the price would be reduced. Like if there's no basement, would that change the cost estimate of it? Or if you weren't building in the walking track, or if you weren't?
Yeah, I think there's, as you say, variables is a very good term to use. If you're remodeling this, if you're adding on to it, if you're building new, location of where it gets constructed on your site, there are a lot of variables that would come into play as far as what the anticipated cost would be. So, again, the best way for us to put together a design with a number that we feel confident with, I think, is what we just did with the new building, which allows High Tech the opportunity to reach out to subcontractors with a clearly defined scope based on our design, and that's what we got. And so I think to make a decision based on, adding a gymnasium, for example, as an amenity, that would certainly be a process that you would want to go through, is to make sure we all understand and feel comfortable with what that looks like, where it goes within that gymnasium, what kind of amenities are there. If we're talking a commercial kitchen, educational type spaces, exercise room, that was something, at least from our initial design and our concepts, was not included, was a commercial kitchen. So a lot of variables that we're talking about, and certainly would require or warrant some additional time to design it.
Yeah, one of the things that I walked in tonight with was looking at the cost value. And if we're talking about a $4.2 million for a brand new building, 12,000 square foot, building at $300 a square foot for a brand new building, and the potential of going down the path and doing the remodel / addition at roughly around $3 million. I think the dollar goes a little bit further with the brand new, because when you start opening this up, you won't know what you're actually getting yourselves into. There could be a lot of unknowns. I know childcare is a big thing, and I think it's a great opportunity. It's not the main focus of where I'm going with my decision of where I think that a new city hall makes the more financial sense. It's been talked about, could we do the remodel and addition and make it last for 5 to 10 years? It very well could be done that way. My fear is that $3 million well spent for 10 years, or is it better to spend 4.2 to last 30 to 40 years? If we do the remodel addition for $3 million, and it may very well turn out to be a great design, we could work a lot of schematics into it, make it work functionally for 5, 10, maybe 15 years, we don't know. But what would the new city hall cost be at that point to accommodate for the next 30 to 40 years? Was that price tag going from 4.2 to 8? Is it 6? What's that dollar value going to be later on? And so I'm trying to think of what is the best thing to do today with the finances that we have today to prepare ourselves for the 40-year lookout on the future. And I think the design that we came up with on the new design for New City Hall accommodated that long-term growth. I think we could do the remodel and addition here, but I don't know what it's going to buy us. That 5, 10, maybe 15 years, and then what's the price tag going to be then? We'll be back. Somebody will be back at this table making that hard decision and having those discussions that we're having tonight. And so that's where I'm kind of sitting with it.
But administratively, the administrative wing has the same growth as a new city hall. If you combined council chambers and a community room, I mean, you're saving $462,000. Now, there's also what I look at long-term, streets plan. That's a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of money to pave roads. That's not addressing the Class 5 roads. So we don't know, I mean, it's going to be in the millions. This council or future council is also going to have to talk about the assessments. you know, it's unpopular that residents do 100%, but if somebody goes to zero assessments, I mean, the money has to come from somewhere. I mean, either raise the taxes through the levy to do the roads. So I try to look down the road at what the needs of the city are. I mean, infrastructure and public safety are the primary responsibilities of council. You know, if you look at the cost of just the dedicated council chambers in a new building, that's $840,000. The community room and library is $1,040,000. That's a lot of money, especially a dedicated council chambers. That just, I mean, it can be used, but, you know, so I think what needs 20 years down the road? Does that mean more of a community room? Administratively, the new addition is set up to account for growth. And I think not having staff have to be in construction trailers. I mean, I think it's a good alternative for staff to keep the city functioning, but also, you know, it's a lot less. I commend Tom Lillehei and the previous councils for making this city, you know, financially healthy, but we have to look at the overall picture on where these dollars need to be spent. Because I don't want to see taxes raised. You can pave a lot of roads for the cost difference. So.
I think,
See
yeah.
taxes raised, I mean, that's effectively what's been happening year over year. So it's already occurring. It has been occurring.
In a growing city, that's what happens when you add services, right? So at the end of the day, as much as nobody wants their taxes to increase, when you are growing with school districts and, you know, needing all of these things, sometimes it is a little bit, you know, it's inevitable. At the same time, my initial, you know, it had nothing to do with childcare. It had everything to do with Councilman Maroney's point. Coming from real estate and contracting and developing, my background is in this, and I can tell you that I don't think that I would talk to a single contractor or contracting group or design group that would tell you that it's a better option to remodel long-term than it is to build new, right? 5-10 years, what does that get you versus 50 years, right? So I don't want a council 10 years from now looking back and being like, wow, that was really stupid. They spent $3 million on a remodel and addition, and that doesn't cover the, you know, needs of the growth of the city. I also don't think that it's going to be 20 years that we're going to, you know, have to wait to have those needs. I think the needs are here now. I don't think that they're going to be here in 20 years. They're here now based on the population growth, based on the medium age of, you know, residents that live here, based on the influx in students that are going to school, based on the lack of, you know, facility. I mean, there's just, the list goes on. And I also don't think that I understand the streets plan we're going to get to, you know, this year. We're going to work through assessments. We're going to look at what that looks over the next 30 years, whether that's walking path or streetlights or whatever that looks like. But I also don't think that that justifies making a bad decision, a bad financial decision on whether or not we build new or remodel. Because again, if you sometimes we have to isolate some of the decisions, but, you know, also with keeping in mind the bigger vision of, you know, where we're going. So I think the main focus obviously is that the new build is a better option long-term, for sure. It'll be, you know, built to be expanded, all of these things. But the childcare, I mean, to have something that we could build without raising taxes because of reserves set by former councils, and then to also address a national need, I mean, and how can you get any better than that? I think that there's so many different available options for us. And then again, there's a lot of invaluable things that we can do for residents, like having the community garden here and having the trail that connects from Cross Lake and run through the city of Breezy and having this be a meeting spot for the community. I mean, there's so many other things that I can think of that I think, you know, we would be killing, you know, two birds with one stone. So I think it has to be an all-encompassing decision. I don't think that it's just like one thing. It just has to be, you know, what is going to serve that need long-term. So I definitely think that based on even Scott's recommendation and Mike and Lindsay, and they do this for a living and essentially telling us that it is a better option to build new long-term based on the dollars and the value that we're getting.
So still, you're asking to vote for the daycare, do new, and look at the daycare with no known cost. I mean, there's a month, there has to be a number in 1 month.
No, I'm saying no, without the daycare, take the daycare out of it, right? Take the daycare out of it. It doesn't matter if the daycare is here or not. I still think that it is a better option for the city to build new based on the value, on the long-term growth of where the city's going. But I also ran on the fact that I wanted to find additional revenue streams and or, address some of the childcare needs. So again, I don't think that we are doing our residents, justice by just looking at one aspect of this. I think it has to be an all-encompassing thing. So the daycare thing for me is literally just saying if we are going to build new, which is the path that we were on, which I don't understand why we're backtracking because we already went down this road since June and this is where we came to. So I feel like we're backtracking now. But I just want to put something forth to show residents that I'm not just showing up to vote once a month. Outside of a city council meeting, I am working to build relationships and to try to bring in other things that residents could utilize within the city. So it's not just about sitting here and voting, it's about going out and getting resources, and so that's where the child care thing comes in, because I think it's important that people understand that.
Well, I think we went down the path, I supported new from the beginning. The main reason I supported it was not dislocating city staff. Now we have a proposal that accomplishes, it's a hybrid model, but allows staff to remain in this building, build an addition, and then do with this, this building, either it's a community room or it's a combination council chambers, community room. I mean, that puts the remodel at, 2.6 mil or a little under. So in long term, I mean, it's just different ways of thinking. Everybody has their own ideas and their own opinions. Administratively, it's covered. To Rebecca's point on the community center, that's a lot of money for a community of 2,800. And it's also the administration and the running of it. It's a huge cost.
And that's why I said that I didn't come into this supporting a city-funded community center solely on 2,800 people for tax dollars. I think that would make more sense to partner with the resort, to partner with the school, so that we can, again, do a partnership. And this is something that is happening across the state of Minnesota, right? So I think that a lot of the things that we are looking at as far as growth, like we're not the first city to have these growing pains. We're not the first city that has these needs. We're not the first city that needs to build a new city hall or address daycare issues or address streets or, it's been done before. And no matter what we do, there's pushback because there's one side of the coin of I've lived for 25 years. I don't want to see taxes increased. The needs are different than someone that maybe just moved here a couple of years ago with a bunch of kids that are going to school and they have all these different needs. So there's always been this pushing between, needs based on new and old, change or no change, raise taxes, don't raise taxes. So it's, again, we are not sitting here solving problems that have never been solved before.
I would agree, but I also don't like to vote on things and look to the future when there's not numbers associated with it, period. I mean, that's just the way I think. So, I mean, it's just differing opinions.
Unless anybody else has any discussion, I still believe the dollar value for building new is the better decision, so I'm going to make a motion, Madam Mayor, to continue with the design packet, to continue with the new city hall.
Right. Do I have a second?
So, Mike, just to clarify,
We'll have to have a second in order to discuss, sorry. Do I have a second? I will second your motion. So now we can go ahead and open up for discussion.
can you clarify your motion?
To move forward with the design package for the new city hall, as we've seen today, to go for the design package so it can go out to, I should have put that in there, to go out to bid.
So construction,
Yeah.
development of
Construction
construction documents and bidding.
Yes. So that is my motion, Madam Mayor, if you wanted to still make that your second.
Yeah, I do. I still see that the value is bigger in that sense. I would like Councilwoman Ball to address that because I know that there are aspects of it that you would like to see. I mean, is there still room? I guess my question would be is like, if we did move forward with a new build, is there any opportunity to look at having, some kind of like workout room? Like we're not talking about like a community center and a pool and everything. Like, is there any option to see what that would be? Or are we looking at just strictly what the new build would be? So I think that I would like for you to at least kind of like share where you're at.
This motion is just to continue with what we have in front of us.
Okay.
If we want to continue down the community center / whatever, we can add on to it, whole nother discussion.
Yeah, I think the motion needs to stay on what was presented. The design was strictly
Yes, please.
new city hall as is. No community center, no workout rooms. That's what's been going on for months.
I mean, I'm not willing to support at this point a new building unless there's some additional features to it for that price.
Call the question. Call the question.
All right. Anybody else have anything? All right.
I just want to comment on, because I'm going to be voting not in favor of the motion. I've been pretty consistently bringing up the idea we need to look at and look at factual information when it comes to a remodel of the city hall. We're going to own this building regardless of how it's used, is the way I look at it. I very much doubt it that the city is going to ever sell this building, or at least not sell it within the foreseeable future. I think we would be doing ourselves a favor, and we would be, I feel, serving the taxpayers of this community by looking at all the information. And that's one thing we haven't looked at this point, is what is actually involved with what would a realistic cost look like of remodeling this building. I feel, as I mentioned before, that at least at that point, we can look at the cost, can understand the magnitude of the undertaking against what's already been done with the new city hall and make a more informed decision. So, those are a few of my comments.
Councilman Ball, if we were to look at a new,
No,
what?
we're not looking at anything else. Let's call the question.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Madam Mayor, seeing that at this time we're not moving forward with that, then I would make a motion to accept the proposal to look at the remodel and addition proposal from Woodseth. So I'm making a motion to approve the financing of the $32,000 for the proposal for looking at the remodel and addition.
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
Again, I'll go back to, we went down the path of new, we all were on board with that, we've done it. Regretfully, we are here. That's totally fine. We've all concluded at one time or another that something needs to be done for the city hall. So if the decision for this council is not to move forward at this point with the brand new city hall, we still need to proactively do something. And so that's why I'm in favor of this.
My question then to you, what I was going to ask is that, is there, what would you want to see then from a cost perspective or design to move forward with something from the new building perspective? Like, what is it that you want to see in order to consider a new build?
I mean, is it possible with the design proposal, and maybe it would have to be a separate proposal to get more accurate numbers on like a new building with
Point of clarification, Madam Mayor, that question, are you now asking, so the motion's on the proposal to expand and remodel,
Yes.
but the question that was just asked was about a new building?
Yes, if there's a way that we could also get with that proposal, some other kind of design cost
Information on
estimate
it.
information so that we could then say, okay, well, now we have three options, right? There's the design the way that it was, that the motion didn't pass. There was the ability to look at the remodel and expansion, costing the 33,000. And then could potentially, with that, could we then get what other options and costs available? Should we add like a small gym there? Or what, and that's why I'm asking, like, could we make it so that there's more than one thing that you're doing at the same time? So the next time we meet for a discussion, we have more on the table.
Shouldn't we be discussing that, though, after the motion that has been seconded
That's what I'm
is
asking. So
voted, then
that's
we
why
discuss?
she asked him that.
The motion can be amended, I guess,
Yes.
is the point of
Yes.
having the discussion, I think.
Yes.
But
That was my point.
for me, that would be helpful, because we're talking about having all the information to make the right decision. So we're saying, can we have numbers on a remodel and addition? I'm saying, can I have not estimates of, a gym with the huge walking track around it, like legitimate expectations for, like, or more accurate expectations for what a community center feature could look like attached to a new building. Or more reasonable, I don't know,
Yeah.
Not something extravagant.
Again, we're not talking about like the 2 million added. We're talking about like if there was, I don't even know how many like feet by feet that would be, but if there was a simple, we didn't even have to have locker rooms or anything. I mean, if there was a simple, key fob room that had some gym equipment with no locker rooms, and what would that look like, right? Like what cost would that be? I don't think that would be like an astronomical amount, right? We're not looking at a
Yeah.
pool or anything else. So that's kind of where I wanted that to be included in the,
And I think I kind of asked for this in the past, unfortunately, like, I think it was just like a number that you rattled off to us during one of the meetings. It wasn't actually like anything super helpful or written down anywhere, except for maybe recorded in a recorded meeting. So for me to make a good decision, that's what would be helpful to me. So, because if the pricing is so good now, per square footage or whatever, and maybe it isn't for community center features, maybe it's not. But if it is, and we're making a decision, a vision for the future of, something that residents in the city have said they want, it now is probably the time to do it, if we're gonna do it. I mean, if we're not gonna do it now, then it's gonna be another 20 years before we even go down this path again.
May I respond? Okay. What I would say are, so a few things. Moving forward, we will anticipate that the pricing will be different, no matter what option we go. So the further we go, obviously, in the spring, getting closer to the construction season of this summer, we're going to more than likely see some higher numbers. What would be really helpful, we, in our proposal, have that will be completed by February 28th. So as we take a look at a potential additional space onto the new city hall, we're proposing to have committee meetings, pick that back up again. It would be great if you could call in or maybe just speak to that piece. So as we move forward on design, I think it'd be great. And I mean, we certainly want to make sure that what you have conceptually in your mind in terms of what would, be a great amenity, that'd be wonderful to have your feedback on that. So if you could consider that, that would be great. The other thing that would be very nice for us as a design team, as we take a look at, again, looking at to what extent do we remodel this building, to your point, Councilman Scott, it would be great for these three options to have your threshold in terms of cost. We're at a point where we've really established some great understanding and expectations in terms of just working with staff and the committee, everything from what type of security system and AV equipment to space needs. And so, as I stated in the proposal here, we're able to jump right into some design options here. But if we could get budget numbers for those three options that you're requesting tonight, I think that would be really helpful. I think it would make your jobs a lot easier 1 month from today or whatever it would be. In 30 days to come back and make an educated decision. So that would really help us out. That way we can design around that and make sure that what we get you meets your expectations.
Would agree.
Minister Chansky, can you answer a question? We have the motion on the floor, second to approve the workload. Can a subsequent motion be made to address the budget of where we want the remodel addition to come in at? So it doesn't have to be bundled with this motion?
You can. I guess I'd first like to clarify, Mike, this request to add that piece of looking at what does an expanded new building look like, does that fit within your proposal?
It would be some additional scope, but I mean, the way that I'm looking at this, you know, could we have an agreement where we're not increasing the amount of time and we'll track our costs hourly, and then if we were to go over, is that okay? Or do you want me to give you a definitive number of what that potentially?
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to
It's
get at
whatever you're
is
comfortable with.
this additional request is not within their scope, so
Yeah.
I'm not gonna hold.
Talking about like
Lidseth to
$5,000 or another $30,000?
No.
I mean, so there's a difference,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
There's
there's
a
a
difference.
difference between a
Yeah.
couple $1,000 and another 30,000. So if you can
Yes.
give us a
Less than
ballpark,
5,000,
I
less
mean.
than 5,000, yeah.
Oh, okay, then, yeah.
Because when, yeah, I'm just trying to think about it, so, because we want to take a look at within these walls, what can we do? Minimum addition, but then at the same time, again, I can't help but think, like what we were talking about after the workshop, there could be considerable savings, at least the less that we touch this building. So in my mind, I'm going through a few different iterations as we move forward. So, yeah, less
So,
than 5,000.
Going back to your question, Councilmember Maroney, at this point, I think what is needed, so the motion on the floor is to accept the proposal as presented. So at this point, if we want to add the additional piece of requesting, what is that now kind of third option of expanded new build look like? I think the motion will need to be amended to include exception of this proposal with the addition of a expanded new build option and any costs associated with that design.
One question I
You
have,
can put a not to exceed numbers, not to exceed $5,000 if you want, but now that motion will need to be amended to include those pieces.
the one question I had is, you know, your comment, the less we touch the building, the better it is. So if it's, say, a council chambers and a community room, I mean, what are we really doing? You're taking out walls, correct? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there's electrical and plumbing depending on reconfiguration, you know, restrooms.
Yeah, the restroom count. So, as Mr. Sadowski mentioned at the workshop, so we would look at this entire building as an A3 and potentially with where the offices are now. So if within this footprint, if we're able to do some additional things, like an amenity for the community, you know, we're increasing we're intensifying the use. So then we would take a look at the minimum plumbing fixture counts required, so more than likely we'll add on to that. Life safety wise, we'll take a look at that as well, and then from a ventilation standpoint, we'll review HVAC. So it's a bit of a domino effect there, and so we'll take a peek at that. And again, for just being in my position just as an architect, those are the kinds of things that I am just going to do anyway, is to just try to take a look at, from an overall project scope, what makes the most sense when I know and understand what your budget is, because I'm going to design against that, and that's just how I need to do that to be as efficient as we can as a design team to be back here in 30 days.
I feel like this discussion has gone way every which way but the motion. So I'm going to continue down the path because it seems like we're okay with that.
Well, we want all the information, so.
It is, but what we're asking, and this goes back to, it's the ask of, I'll go back to the ask. It was the ask of what would make a new build more acceptable. But anything more acceptable, meaning more things, means more money on that new build. It seemed like we said no due to the cost of what we're getting. If we said, okay, it's now 4.7, but it gets the gym and a walking trail, are we on board with spending more for those amenities?
I think we'll answer
I
that
wouldn't-
once we get it, right? I think that
I
that's
wouldn't say
the,
4.7 for those additional.
I mean, I think $5,000 or less to be able to make
Yeah.
that decision is well worth it. I mean,
yeah.
this is this is a decision to spend 3, 4, or, $5 million or whatever, or less. But we have no idea what that cost could be. It could be 4.2 or whatever, instead of 3 for a remodel and addition. Plus being able to use this building potentially for a daycare then in that regard. So you're getting more benefits. I don't see why spending like $5,000 or less when you're going to be looking at spending 3 or 4 is a lot of money to be able to make a good decision.
I agree.
I don't disagree with that. Where I disagree with is now we're bringing it up now that we said no to the new based on what was designed. I kind of wish this discussion would have happened a month or two ago of where we're heading down with the budget, of where we are expecting that this new building was going to be, what it was going to include. Hindsight's 2020, right?
Well, I
So-
think only recently we found out the new numbers, that it was going to cost a lot more, so I disagree with that.
Yeah, it
Like,
was
when
after the
we-
last council
disagree with-
meeting, yeah.
That as well, but also we were never presented an option for a new addition and then repurposing this for community room. It was always going to be a remodel. I mean, hindsight being 2020, I think we should have set numbers from the get-go on new and or remodel and designed around that. I mean, when you get the wish list, it's going to cost money. I mean, I think, the bottom line is the project, there should have been hard numbers attached to cost of new, cost of remodel, and that it helps make a more informed decision.
Well, lesson learned, right? I mean, it is
Yeah.
hard
It is,
hard to know some of these things unless you go through the process, and unfortunately, sometimes,
So I'd like to see them in separate motions still, so I'm going to still stick with my original motion to accept the proposal as presented, to look at the remodel/addition. We'll talk about it, but I want to make them subsequent motions. So are you still good with the second, Mr. Jensen?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I'm fine.
okay.
all right. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
So before we leave to the next one, I want to make a motion to have the design committee not exceed a 3 million out the door budget. FF&E, design, building for this remodel proposal. I'm
One
making a
question I
motion for
have on
3
that is, again, if you remove the council chambers from the new addition, which I really don't see why they're needed at the cost of 300 versus 135 remodel, and look at council chambers in this building and community room, and you could fit a library. So, I mean, what are we gonna get? I mean, they're just gonna give us a room and then we decide, what will this building become with the addition? And then the usage for the existing city hall.
Can we just revisit before we move on to estimates or how much we want to budget for, can I just make a motion to just spend the additional $5,000 or less to get the numbers on a new build with some additional amenities added onto it, like a smaller gym, like a basketball gym court or a small workout room or some numbers on that? That's my motion. Before we get to numbers on cost for remodel plus addition or new build or,
You made a motion?
yeah.
All right. A second? I will second it. All right, any other discussion?
So we're talking about a proposal of $5,000 to look at additional amenities. And you want to be specific to those or generic? I'm just looking for clarification on the motion, so as a design committee member, they would know what to try to implement and come up with that cost for.
Well, I can attend, I know he asked, like, can you attend meetings to help with those discussions? I don't have any specific amenity in mind, which is why, I have different ones depending on what they cost. Like, I'm not trying to spend $3 million on some community center features. So I would really be interested in exploring kind of what the pricing is around some of those added features? Like, is it a commercial kitchen, like you mentioned, or is it, what is just a basketball court without a raised above walking track? What is that per square footage?
Maybe you
or-
choose one, right? Maybe you choose one of them and then you.
Right,
make it with
that's
that,
what
yeah.
I'm suggesting, like, maybe it's just one of those things. Maybe it's just a basketball court where you could have, like, lots of different, it could be used for lots of different things.
I think similar to our previous schematic design phase where we did draw that and include that, and then we
Right.
did have some ranges in there. So that's what I'm seeing, is that we would build off of that and discuss those, draw those out, see what size exactly you're thinking, and then we'd
Right.
be able to.
I mean, and I don't think it's so outrageous, because we're not talking like $10 million like we were originally given the numbers for, when it was a pool, a gym, like a whole bunch of locker rooms. I mean, it could be much smaller.
I want to see that as well, because I do think that even, let's just say, like, and I don't know what the numbers are, so I'm just hypothetically here. Like, let's just say it was just a basketball court, right? That was like the only thing, right? Well, how many parents would love to come take their kids to shoot, right? And what dollar, what amount is that? And like, is that something that we can, again, I think that it's just helpful. If we're going to have all the information, we need to have all the information and not just one part of it.
But if you go down the amenities path, you also have to have it as such. Okay, you put a basketball court. Well, what if somebody wants a walking path or a pool? If there's no path to get there 5 years down the road, or at some point, what's the point of doing it?
Right, and I would hope that,
Right? I mean,
the team
Yeah,
at WITSEF would be forward-looking in that regard, yes.
yeah.
I mean, you have to have a path that, okay, if you say this is the amenity
Yeah.
for this option, but we're,
I would like it on record, though, as well, that we did look at these options, because again, I've had a lot of conversations with people who are not even familiar with city government, right? And they do want these things, and their voices are not heard here. And I think that it is important that at least on record, we're looking at every single option and what that looks like, and talking to residents
Right,
outside
because
of
when we
it.
first discussed this, it was in a workshop.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people were attending those at that time.
Right.
And so this is our opportunity to say, yes, we looked at that, here's what it would have cost. I mean, and then we can make a better informed decision.
It's,
I don't think it's funny to like look at that as an option. I think it's a legitimate item to consider.
So the motion on the floor is to spend up to $5,000 to look at the gym, basketball, walking, keep in mind of what a walking trail could be, weight room, et cetera. Did I encompass that motion and second correctly?
all right, any other discussion?
Is there a way, along with identifying the actual cost, of being able to understand the cost of operation? So we're considering, some of these additional amenities at some point, an average cost to operate X size basketball court, as an example.
I think what we would do is reach out to previous clients and try to get somewhat of an idea for you.
I think it's a
that would
good
be
point.
helpful.
I mean, you need to know, what does it cost to run it?
Yeah, and it definitely depends on what amenity it is.
Yeah, for
I mean, I
sure.
think the maintenance, I don't know for sure, but would be, obviously it's a lot less for like a basketball court than a pool, than a, walking track, than a,
But if the school could utilize it, right? Let's just say like the kids have practice, like a youth group or whatever, like, and they're like able to use the gym similar to like the Deerwood Auditorium, right? I can't tell you how many times we played basketball in that old gym, which is attached to the or the police department, right? I mean, so there's other cities that do have these amenities that the surrounding community and
Yeah.
schools use. So I think that, again, it would, we could look at that.
yeah, you
But
have
what
like
is-
open basketball, you have like birthday parties. I can just think of many
But
different.
what is the impact to staff? I mean, staff, that's,
Yep, I'm not
That-
trying to,
no, but I mean, it is,
Not
does
impact
staff have
either.
bandwidth to do it? I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I think that's another point. It's not only, cost to administer, but can staff handle it? I don't know, if they can. I can't speak for staff, but it does have an impact on staff as well, so.
So either staff or design committee will work on that operational function. Makes sense. Okay.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Aye.
carries. Oh. Okay. You opposed.
Now going back to what we want to set for the budget for looking at for the remodel / addition. Just to start off, I think that with staff coming up with 3 million, I know there's a debate on whether this, but I think it's the question too of what can this be repurposed for if it was to be a community room with a dedicated chambers, like the original plan was,
Yep.
looking at that. So that's where I agree with looking at no more than 3 million and making sure that design committee comes in underneath that.
But also, if you put the council chambers in here and have a community room, you're saving 462,000. So both options. I mean, a community room and combined council chambers and community room. You can fit the library in, and I don't think it has to be any larger than what it is. I mean, at some point, if volunteers don't want to do it anymore, you can rip out a couple walls. It's not a big, I don't think a big deal.
I mean,
Madam
I
Mayor,
would, yeah.
if I may just add one quick thing to that, just to make sure people are aware, one of the comments was that benefit of this was we don't have to relocate staff. If we do keep this, if the direction to the design team is to keep this as a multi-room, that does mean, at least during the construction phase of this, council will have to be relocated.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure people are aware of that.
But again,
That's, again, I just want to make sure that if we move that way, that's a clear, it's easier to relocate council meetings than it is staff, but just so you're aware.
Okay. Is that a motion? Or are you just
I'll-
making a
I'll just-
statement that you
I'll
would
put
like
it
to
into a
see it
motion.
under?
I'd like to make a motion that the design committee has a threshold of no more than 3 million with the concept of coming in less, but really looking at the diverse use of what this room should be, multi-use versus dedicated community room with a dedicated council chambers, to really look into that.
Second.
So that would be attached to looking at the addition with the remodel of the criminal.
Yeah, so taking the proposal that council just approved and putting a budget on it, so it's not just wherever we stand. We didn't really set a budget with the new building, so this is taking in the consideration of a $3 million planned budget to make sure that the design committee and the proposals come in underneath that dollar if we choose to go down this path still in March by going to bid.
And the benefit of identifying a dollar amount in that way is what, as you think about it?
As I think about it, is because we came back at 4 million was too much. So we need to identify what we're willing to spend on a remodel and addition. If 4 million is too much for new building and we want to go down a remodel with addition, what does that look like? If you tell me it's only $1 million, then, and we all agree, then we have to stay within that confinement of what $1 million looks like. According to the numbers, wouldn't get us anything. So getting to where we need to come up with a budget, we could say 4 million, but then at that point, why wouldn't we go new? We could say 2 million, but then I have concerns of what are we gonna get for that dollar value. So by coming up with a budget dollar amount that the design committee can work with, design staff knows how to work with it, the Gorian process, high tech, everybody being involved knows where that threshold must come in under.
and then again, that number is FF&E, and
All
I mean,
in.
it's all inclusive.
Final design schematics, FF&E, site work.
Yeah.
That's
It's not worth it
What's
otherwise,
high-tech
yeah.
proposal was gonna come back in.
Yeah.
That is the dollar amount we are expensing.
I guess the thing that I'm wrestling with a little bit is if we didn't put any fiscal constraints on a new city hall and the price tag worked out to be what it worked out to be. And yet we're doing that with the remodel. You know, are we gonna be like, kind of comparing sort of like situations, right? Like in an unconstrained sort of build? against more of a constrained kind of environment, I guess, is the thing that I'm just kind of,
I think what it also does is it builds a comfort level. So if we all sit up here and go 3 million for the, no more than 3 million, and a design comes at 2.8, we don't go, oh, that's a little too much, then we want to spend. It's coming up with that dollar value that we can all buy in and say, we would accept. If it gets us what we need and it's at that dollar value, this seems like the right thing to do. Because if we don't decide that and it comes in at 2.2, could we come up here and say, oh, it's not worth it? If it gets us to what we need and it's under the budget that we set today, there'd be no reason not to move forward. So
I don't think you'll know that until you get the information, though. No matter what budget you set, like if you set $3 million, like depending on what gets brought forward, like we can still say, no, that's not worth whatever number gets presented. I don't think making a budget right now is tying us to a decision in a month from now.
You want to?
Yeah, and Councilman Ball's kind of into the point. Mike can give his best estimate, but until High Tech puts the numbers to it, we're not gonna really know. Your best numbers are the numbers that you got off of there, 135 for remodel and 300 for new. So you're not, it seems like you guys are kind of going back and forth, and it gets a little confusing after a while. Usually people come up with a design and then it costs what it costs, and then you're like, okay, now I wanna, all right, if we lop this off, is this gonna be a little cheaper to fit into our parameter and all that? You've gotten numbers, the $300 per square foot for new and $135 for remodel. That's your rough numbers that you should be going off of on this stuff. So now you're telling Mike, all right, let's just do it to 3 million. It's getting confusing. I think you gotta go the other way. You gotta come up with the design you want, then you can start chopping amenities off on that till you get to what you need. If the numbers come out way more than what you expected. And maybe Councilman Maroney, maybe you're looking to try to get a commitment out of this council so that we keep kicking the can down the road a little bit so that we can finally move on. But, I mean, Mike can give his best estimate, but it seems like the design keeps changing and the gym and all this, and it's kind of going back. I feel bad for Woodseth, and it seems like they got to design something new every time they come here. But I mean, it goes back to what I said at the workshop meeting. You got staff is exploding out of this area. You have some options. You got new plus the old. The way I even look at it too, maybe you could do a new city hall, attach it to this, and try the childcare thing, which I think is a genius idea. And if that doesn't work, maybe this is on the site of the new gymnasium that we're at. And you could lop this down and build your new gym here. I mean, there's a lot of options that you guys have, and maybe that's the difficult premise in this whole deal, but.
I think it's getting the majority, right? Like for me, I already know what I think is the best option. Like it is building new, and we can always add on later. I mean, I think the value in that long term, that's what it is. I think that from a community center standpoint, I think that there are a lot of options to partner to get what residents need along with what the school needs and, whatever else. So it is hard because it's like you want to give and take a little bit to get a majority vote.
Right.
But when you don't have that majority vote, it's like you have to kind of like compromise a little bit. But I mean, I'm on board with everything that you just said. And I think that is the route we should go. But, if this is what everyone needs to make a decision, then.
And I look at, like, you take the city of Crosby, for example. They have a park with camping there. We got, the White Birch handles the campgrounds here. But they also have the Hallett Center. They got a pool. They got a workout area. They got an ice rink. And they're a town of 400 or 500 people less than you guys. Mm-hmm. Now, that does get subsidized by the Hallett family, too. But, not only what Madam Mayor was talking about with the schools and maybe doing a partnership with White Birch, but maybe it's something that Sourcewell would help on that too. I know Staples looked into Sourcewell helping them with a walking track that they're installing in their high school.
Yeah, there's a lot of options, and that's why I brought up the daycare. It wasn't to muddy the waters, and that's why I brought up the conversations, because I think there is still value. Not everything is concrete, right? Not everything
Correct.
is like, this is what's going to happen and this is what the numbers are. Sometimes you just have to say, okay, this is the vision. You start with the vision, right? Like, this is the vision of what we need in the city, and how you get there is incremental. It's not, you're not going to always get everything that you want right away, but you still have to be able to like take those steps. And that for me, again, is like, we're trying to take those steps and we're trying to address these things, but I think that we're getting so into the weeds with some of these things that
Exactly.
it's not productive, and it makes, it's hard.
Yeah.
Or maybe the weeds is good. I mean, to Steve's point, unfortunately, maybe back in November or October, we should have just gotten good numbers on, the three options that we had kind of mulled around with. I
Right.
mean, it's just that we're here today and we only had, good numbers on one of the options. And so we, now we're just kind of going back and forth on it, unfortunately. But
Yeah, and I mean,
Yes.
and it's, there's nothing right or wrong or what you're doing or whatever. I mean, you guys are the representatives of the city, and what you decide is what should happen. And I just think it's one of those deals, if we can come up with a little bit more, it seems like we're talking about budget and then we're talking about needs and whatever, we're kind of all over the board. I think we got to get a little more organized, maybe start with budget and work your way out, or maybe we start with needs and then it costs what it costs, I guess is my point.
Madam Mayor, to go off what Scott said is, this is something in all the building projects I've been involved in, is I think part of kind of the floundering that we're doing, at least on the design team's perspective, is generally with these projects, we're given kind of upfront of these parameters, we say yes. Hit these notes, hit this budget, hit these elements, we say yes. And we haven't been given that. So I think that's part of what we're trying. We're trying to listen. We're listening. That's why, we moved, we shrunk the original proposal of City Hall was that 2-story, 15,000 square foot building, went to 1 and 12,000 square feet based off what we heard. Trying to get that cost down, again, based off what we heard. And then it was, well, what about remodel? And so I think what we're struggling with is that, like, what is the yes? What is it you want? I want to see X, Y, Z, and I want it to come in at this kind of cost. I think that's what Scott's kind of going at. Even if it's cost afterwards, but we want to see these elements, and then we'll design it, and then, well, that costs this much money. And then you decide, again, well, don't like that. Sometimes there's no cost. It's let's see. Here's what we want. Here's the wish list. Let's see what it costs, which is kind of the way we did this original new build. And that's why the reason I think they brought up, and Mike originally brought up the idea of Michael Maroney brought up putting that budget is, okay, there seemed to be a cost concern. So if we say, okay, don't exceed this, again, that does give us a parameter of, okay, we have to look at maybe it's a multi-use kind of chambers instead of a dedicated chambers. How do we configure the staff space? How do we make everything work? So I think that's really, again, why we asked for that direction of give us either a cost or elements that you want to see, so that when we come back to you with that design, you go, yep, that looks good. We like the design, we like the elements, we like the cost. Let's go.
Yeah, and that's
So
why
we don't come back in March and then, well, now we want to see X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Because again, as Mike said, we are hitting that tipping point where that $300 and $135 is going to change.
Well, and I think too, like, what is a couple $100,000 if it's something that is a resident need, right? Like, and it's going to be utilized. And that's where I think why I asked, Councilwoman Ball, because it's like, is there something that, either way, new build makes sense. Value-wise, long-term, 100% makes sense. So if there is an amenity that, you feel that the residents could utilize that, again, if it is a couple $100,000, is that worth it? Probably long term, that's going to be worth it. And if we're going to sit up here and argue about a couple $100,000, I don't think that we are addressing truly then the needs of the city. I don't. And so I don't know. I'm struggling because I want you to, get what you need as far as like what the representation base that you have. But then at the same time, it's like, I know that a new build I feel like is the best option. And they're telling us that it's the best option. So I think it's just.
Well, like you take, for example, let's say a workout room, just a workout room. I don't know much about the cost of the equipment, but at $300 a square feet, if we do a 30 by 30 room, that's an extra $270,000. And then the workout equipment itself. To me, that's extremely reasonable. I got to be honest with you. So, I mean, I look at that and I'm like, all right, so if if that's what we're kind of, if, let's say we do the addition and then we add a 30 by 30 room, it's not gonna really change the mechanical. We're already gonna sprinkle, so that kind of takes that out of the equation. It's, you know, all right, so let's say we're gonna do another 10 by 22 sets of locker rooms. Well, that's another 200, so let's, you know, bathrooms are probably gonna be a little more expensive than 300 a square foot. But that's kind of what the point is with those numbers. That's where they're kind of valuable. You can kind of estimate. And a 30 by 30 workout room is pretty good size, frankly. And I always think of this town, of all the towns I do, this is the only town that doesn't have a downtown. I mean, basically the resort has the downtown. And when I first started working here, I'd work on the weekends and stuff, and I always thought, I was a young guy, I always thought parks were a waste of money. I'm like, that's crazy. And it's gonna kind of dovetail into what the mayor's point. When I worked here on Saturday and Sunday, I could not believe how many people were in this park. I've never seen a park get used as much as this one. As now, being older and a lot grayer and a little fatter, I can see that a good school district and park system is imperative for your housing stock, that it makes your house worth more. And I just think of
Childcare does as well.
the childcare does as well. And all these amenities make everybody's value of their homes more, so then they can come in and complain they're getting taxed more. But we don't
That's the
set
county,
that, we
yeah,
don't set that
that's not-
assessment. Let me clarify that before we come to the next meeting. But those are all amenities. I mean, it's just like looking for a resort. I mean, you look at the amenities that they have there, and we have so much green space here and so much room to expand, and we're gonna expand. I mean, I've been here almost 18 years, and we're number 1 or number 2 in Crow Wing County in every year in new homes built. And that's a lot because of the lot sizes, the quality of housing, the park. And I just think, you know what, for a 30 by 30 workout room and a couple of locker rooms, we're probably talking less than $500,000. That's pretty cheap.
And that's why it's like, if we had that, would you then support, you know, the new build? And so I think it would be worth that, you know,
I
looking
think
at
to me, it's a
that.
lot easier to justify then.
Yes.
Because we can
Yes.
say to the residents,
Yes.
look, you don't have to drive to Cross Lake now to go to the gym. I mean, you don't have to go to Pequot. You don't have to drive to Takedown. It's like, or, you know, half an hour away. I mean, you can just drive 5 minutes. So you
Right.
can go over your lunch break and walk on a treadmill. I mean, I think it's huge.
It is huge.
I do. And you bring up a valid point. To spend $4 million to have the same amenities that you have now, it does, you know, when you made that point, I'm like, that is a good point. But if we can add, you know, for $500,000 more, a little bit more to the workout, and then, you know, like I said, maybe phase it out. And let's look at in a year now, let's work about building a gymnasium to it. You know, see what the community support is. See what partners we can get in on that. We don't have to build it all right now.
Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of why too, I wanted to support you in that, you know, decision, because I felt like it was important. Because again, it's like, I can't justify in my head, like, spending $3 million on an addition and a remodel that does not give the same amount of, you know, services and, you know, amenities for the residents. It just seems like such a waste of money. In 10 years, another council is going to be like,
Well-
why did you guys spend $3 million to do that when there's no room for expansion and there's no other offered services? I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
And if you look at it this way, Madam Mayor, like Mike was talking about, you build the lobby right outside this wall, and then new administration on that. You can use this for whatever reason, you know, library, community room for now, but maybe then we start turning the gears for a year or two from now, start looking at the gymnasium or daycare or whatever items that you want. I guess what my point is, we don't have to do the whole enchilada right now.
Right.
We can build, expand, take this building down if we want to, whatever. We can do what we want. We got oodles of green space out here. That's the nice thing. Most of the city halls you work at, they're landlocked. They don't have any room to expand.
And again, the cost is certainly important, and it's a component to it, but it's not the only piece. And excuse me for saying this, which may be unpopular with some people, but we have spent zero amount of time in conversation around a new city hall and around the cost to operate a new building. If we don't think that the insurance on a new building is going to go up, that's kind of naive. If we don't think it's going to require some additional staffing, that's probably naive on our part. So
I think when we did the community center, like committee project, we did look at staffing and some of those operations costs when we visited all the different community centers around the area. So, and I know Steve, you were on that too.
Yeah.
So we have looked at that somewhat. So I wouldn't say we haven't considered it at all, but it is, I agree with you. It is something to consider if we decide to go down that path. It's not something that we couldn't consider into the cost and those things. Yeah.
yeah, I was just speaking to it as, I don't believe this council, since we've been a council working together, that we have had that information. We've focused any conversations on, along with the cost to construct, what's the cost to operate? At least
Yeah, I
don't
think that's
recall that
probably
we
true
have.
because when the numbers we had just gotten were like the $11 million with the pool.
Yes.
And so I don't think any of us really entertained any of that discussion, except for maybe myself, because of the cost. So we didn't even go down that road. I would agree with that.
So there was a motion, right?
I don't think there was a motion.
I take it back.
There wasn't a
Good point.
motion. I just wanted to talk about, I mean, we could probably.
I'm pretty
David-
sure there was a motion actually. And I think, yeah,
What I've heard from discussion,
motioned
take that portion out, so
the
I
5
retract it.
That
Okay.
motion already passed.
Accepted. I think it was the new motion on
And
budget.
Councilmember-
Oh,
Martin
that's
just said
right,
he
okay,
rescinded
that
his
was your
motion.
motion, okay, so, okay,
said
so
he
I think
rescinded
we're,
So does staff and Woodseth have what we need to move forward with what we need?
Move forward with something.
and then are we gonna be presented these options in a workshop instead of it at
Meeting
council?
and it'll be at the meeting at the council meeting. Has to be at the council meeting.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't have to be, but to keep things moving, again, we're getting close to that precipice of those numbers no longer being valid.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So our goal and what the proposal was is that we'll be back and we're committing to buckle down and we'll be actually meeting tomorrow to buckle down and get this done.
Yes. And then you're gonna step in too, right? Because it would be super valuable to have you a part of that.
So call in, I think I can accommodate that easily within my schedule, so yeah, just.
But
well,
from the motions that have been made and passed, I think we're good to move forward. with what-
Perfect.
And, yeah.
All right, we will go ahead and move on to the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, quickly on the consent agenda, I do have one request on 8A, so the minutes for the January 2, 2024 city council meeting. If you go to page 41 of your packet, under the Chickasaw sewer and rezoning, that third paragraph, from the comments from Mr. Michael Buckner, Mr. Buckner actually reached out to me and asked if you would consider changing it. It currently says he and most of his neighbors are happy with their septic systems. He asked if to be more accurate to what he actually said, if it'd be changed to he and 5 of his neighbors.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the amendment to the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're gonna go ahead and take a quick 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back to new business. I wish I could go back in time. All right, 30 seconds. All right, we'll go ahead and move forward. We'll move on to new business, police officer hiring.
Chief, you want me to handle that or you want to handle it?
I can take that. Madam Mayor, Council, our candidate for the vacant police officer position has withdrawn and is no longer being considered for the position. So with that, we had to move on. During the week of October 9th, the interview committee comprised of Administrator Chansky, Sergeant Garcia, and Fire Chief Schwankel interviewed 8 candidates for the position. One of the finalists was Marshall Garby. I also met with Marshall Garby recently, and I concur with their decision. Marshall attended Central Lakes Community College. He is currently employed by the Cronin County Sheriff's Office as a correctional jailer. Marshall also worked for the Sheriff's Department in the Boat and Water Division during the summer of 2023. At this time, I am recommending Marshall Garby for a full-time position. I also recommend a starting wage of P1 Step A.
Right. Does anyone have any questions?
So does this include this individual having the paramedic credentials? Is this the police paramedic?
No, he does not.
No. So you're
No.
looking at this as just a full-time?
He is just an officer.
So
Okay,
I'll just
brand
say
new.
to that question, as a reminder, we have 3 different pay grades for officers. You have just regular patrol officer, which is that P1, officer EMT, which is that P2, and the officer paramedic, which is that P3. So,
If you approve this decision, this recommendation, we will have a new marshal in town. So that's a benefit.
Merk, merk, merk. All right. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the hiring of Marshall Garvey as the full-time police officer.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, welcome, Marshall. All right, we'll move on to lift stations 6 and 7 rehabilitation.
Any questions? Pretty much what happened on lift station 6, the ears which hold the pump in place, vibration created some gap last year. The pump hopped off, and the pumps are about 300 to 400 pounds, and it was spinning, kind of thrashing around in the wet well. I tried replacing the claw, which, I thought that was where the problem was. During an inspection, they're like, it's the base and the claw, both of these. It's not an optimal way to do it. Typically, you have, they're called guideposts that go all the way down. This has wires, so it the pumps don't secure as well. The pump guys have told me these stations are not ideal. They last about 20 years. I want to say this was during the school sewer extension, so 06, 05, somewhere in that range, so right around 20 years. So that's what it will be. It'll be basically where the pump connects to the base of the wet well, and then all the associated hardware that hooks into the force main and gets it out, so.
And both were in the budget for this year.
Yes.
correct. They were budgeted in the sewer capital fund.
I'll make a motion to approve the rehabilitation of lift station 6 and 7 for $40,850.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will move on to the Personnel Committee discussion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So last month, when you approved your organizational resolution, part of that, you had discussion about the council committees, council liaisons, and chose to abolish those committees. And then following that discussion, it was brought to my attention by Councilmember Jensen, a question regarding specifically the grievance procedures outlined in Chapter 27 of the Personnel Policy, which was attached in the packet. Specifically in the grievance procedure, it's a 3-step procedure that if an employee, this is grievances coming from employees, has a formal grievance or dispute, whether it's something about operations or even the personnel policy itself and how it's being administered. It's a 3-step process where the first step is they go to their immediate supervisor or the city administrator and raise their concerns. The then administrator or the immediate supervisor is supposed to, within 10 days of the concern being brought to them, ideally in writing, respond what they're going to do about it, do nothing, change something, how they're going to address the grievance. If the employee is not satisfied with that response, the next step, step 2, would have been to go to the Personnel Committee, which has now been absolved. And if the personnel, they weren't happy with the Personnel Committee's response, then it went to City Council. City Council as a whole made the final decision on the issue. So this is one of those issues that during the Personnel Policy rewrite process, which we're intending to do, we're already looking at to do, Mr. Cohen, as part of the organizational assessment, said yes, that should be a priority, would address that. But in that time, because we're probably still, it's going to take a little bit of a lengthy process to go through that. We do have a discrepancy in the meantime. Hopefully we won't have any grievances. We haven't had any formal grievances in my time we've been here. But should one arise that can't get resolved in step 1 and needs to move forward, we do have a discrepancy of what should be taking place. So having looked at the issue, there are a couple, I gave 4 remedies, if the council we could approach in the meantime until the personnel policy gets rewritten. The first being, you could just simply say skip step 2. If it can't be resolved with the immediate supervisor or the administrator, you just go straight to the city council. B would be to reestablish a personnel committee strictly for the purpose of hearing grievances. The reason I worded it that way is from the discussion that the council had, I've heard from other council members, there really isn't a desire to have the personnel committee as it was, that considered all personnel issues from like reviewing, health policies or the health insurance quotes and things like that. So this would be just having a body that should a grievance arise, we know who's handling it. Option C would be an amendment to the language. So B would be not really amendment, but reestablishment of a new committee. Option C would amend the language in the interim to state something other than personnel committee in step 2. So instead of where it says shall be directed to the personnel committee, maybe is it just the mayor, any 2 council members, fill in the blank. So change that to something else. Or option D would be just simply do nothing and wait for a situation to arise, and if one arises, address it at that time. So any of these solutions from a staff perspective, I think will address the discrepancy we have until the policy can be rewritten. So we're just kind of looking from council of what would you like to see should we have an issue where we have a grievance that needs to be taken to that next level.
I think my thought process when I started it was, I asked Michael for a description of what the personnel committee was. I don't think we need, a personnel committee in that capacity. But it's going to take a while to rewrite the employee handbook, which it should be rewritten because it should be called employee ordinances. I mean, it's written like our building code, but for personnel. I think it's an important process. It's 1 paragraph. It's an easy fix in the interim. I think either B or C is fine myself. Whatever the council wants to determine if it's worth, if we establish a personnel committee, when David rewrites it, then we have to address again, to get rid of it, or in the interim, going forward when he rewrites it, do we want, C? I would like to hear the, council's opinion on it.
We have labor agreements.
Yes, so this is not just labor agreements. So the labor agreements have some specific language, and it's only for the patrol officers that are only union. So this applies to all other employees as well.
Right, I was
Non-union.
just wondering what the labor agreement currently speaks to as far as handling of grievances.
With that labor union, with that union, I believe it does involve an outside mediator. So for the PD, it would be, I think if you can't come to it, I haven't looked, I have to pull up exactly the wording, but if I remember correctly, it does involve an outside moderator or mediator. I don't know, Chief, if you want to speak to more of that.
There's a process for all police officers. There's a police officer bill of rights. So we can't question an officer if a complaint comes in unless we have a signed complaint. So either the complainant can sign it, and if they refuse to do so or don't want to do so, if I feel it's a legitimate complaint, then I can sign it as the complainant, and the process continues. So it's a big, long process, but it's laid out, and there's a.
But Chief, also, I think this also, if a complaint comes from a member of the union against the city, that's the process I was speaking to. Not if a complaint about a police officer. If a complaint comes from a police officer, I think that's what Councilmember Scott was talking about, then I believe we have to involve mediators depending on how far it goes. But there's a process there as well outlined in the agreement, it's different than this one.
I think we have to be careful. I know that Nisswa has had some recent issues about circumventing the city administrator, which handles, the staff. And so I don't necessarily want that to be an issue for us where, we have that happen. So,
I think it has happened in the past here, so I think that, was part of the initial
Okay.
concern in the first place, and so.
I think the last time we had a grievance that was a situation, the way the personnel committee handled it was, well, you skip step one.
right.
So in this situation, we're not recommending step one. It's more of what do we do with step two. If it goes beyond step one, if the grieved employee and the administrative supervisor can't come to a solution and the employee wants to take it to that next level, what is the next level?
I would be more in favor to wait, and if there is an issue, we will handle it at that time. I think it's hard sometimes without understanding,
I will just add there, I know some questions have asked in previous meetings about personnel and HR, question about bringing in outside outsourcing. I did reach out to colleagues and just say, okay, what do people do? Does anyone outsource HR, things like that? What I received across the board was not many people outsource HR. Those that do, it's what they're outsourcing is the administration of benefits. So their workman's comp, their vacation, maybe payroll, things like that. Things that I will be honest, we aren't struggling with. I think we have a good grasp on. But when they said when it comes to personnel issues across the board, they were always pretty much, they might involve the city attorney, but every respondent I got, and it was a number, said keep that internal. That is not something you want to let go.
Which would it be, the personnel committee in that?
Yeah, a personnel committee. Some cities had personnel committees. Some said, they handled it from a staff level. And if they needed to bring in their city attorney or labor attorney, they would do that. And only the very highest level of issues, especially if it had to do with a labor union or something, would get to the city council. And that's always our goal, is to try to address things at the lowest level possible.
right.
I agree with Mr. Jensen, is that B or C should be put in place. I'm almost actually in favor more of C and letting the
Mayor?
employee pick the two. Well, I want to be politically correct on this one. But if it's a male-female issue and they feel more comfortable going to a female, if the personnel committee was only comprised of males, there might be a little bit of an issue. I don't know. So letting the griever be able to pick any two, I think makes more sense going forward. Maybe I'm getting too far.
The thing I want to avoid is just people choosing who they want to go talk to every time they have an issue.
Right.
And then there's all these,
And that was the issue in Nisswa, was that it was more consistent and then it became a bigger issue and.
right, so, I mean, that would be the reason not to like just let somebody randomly go to whoever they want to go to, but actually have designated people, but.
I mean, I think the mayor does have the communication with, as far as just like the agenda and stuff. So, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it being the mayor and then, I don't know.
How does it go to the full council if it's?
Yeah.
Again, the process is how the process is supposed to go is someone actually has a genuine grievance, it's supposed to go to the immediate supervisor administrator first. That is step one. So they need to have, before it can be going to these next steps, they need to start with step one. So that was part of the issue they had in that previous grievance. This was like 2 years ago, it was prior to me, was that the employee skipped step one. And so that's when the personnel committee said, start over, you skipped step one. So it does need to start at step one, give us the opportunity at the lowest level to address it. And if they aren't satisfied with that response, then they can go to that next step. So escalate it if they are not happy with the response. And it says informal, like a written response of, here was what your grievance is, here's what my response is. Either I agree with you, here's how we're gonna fix it, or nope, you're wrong, we're not doing anything. Or something along, it's gotta be a written response, and they go, I don't agree with that response, I'm taking it to the next level now.
Is that a closed door meeting with full city council if it goes to step 2?
That was my question as well, Rebecca.
More than likely, if we went to all the way to step 3, so not step 2, so step 2 is just the personnel committee. Step 3 would be full council. Yeah, more than likely that would be handled. I'd have to confer based on the issue with the city attorney, but more than likely, from my understanding of special closed session law, that would be likely a closed session because it has to do with potential litigation, or again, there's multiple different things under statute that depending on what that person is saying, it could be potential litigation, it could be performance issues, it could be multiple different things. So it likely would be done in closed session, not in an open session.
Well, I'm just, because your item A there is to skip step 2 and go straight from city.
Yeah, that was just an
administrator.
option.
Yeah, so I'm just curious
That
how
would,
those meetings
that would
go.
likely not be handled in an open, it would have to be in a notice in an actual council meeting, whether a regular meeting or a special meeting, but it wouldn't be done in open session.
I guess I don't mind that option. If you couldn't handle it, then it went before all of us. I guess I'm fine with that too. I mean, if you can't solve it, I think that maybe then it would be helpful to do it in front of a full council, just because then you get different viewpoints on.
Then we would all know what the issues
Yeah,
were. I think
right.
that was part of the reason of like not having all these little committees. I think at one point when we talked about it
Right.
was that we all understand what's going on within the city and what the concerns
Yeah.
are.
I like that idea. Just do it that way, I suppose, but I don't know, what do you think?
So we're saying go with option A?
That's kind of, what we were just talking about, potentially.
Yeah, so if it wasn't addressed with, the city administrator and they didn't figure it out, then then the next step would be to come before full council, which then we would understand, like, everybody would have an inside opinion or view on what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. The only concern I would have is if we do nothing, if we just leave it blank. I think that presents more of an issue than anything.
And that was my concern when I brought it to David.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be rewritten, but things get pushed out. It could be months, it could be years end, it could slip to next year, but I think one way or another, we need to address one of the, implement one of the steps.
And I apologize, if it was a grievance, did that go to a closed door meeting? Or is it a public?
If it was going to be,
If it went to council.
again, it's kind of a situation of what the grievance is. Again, I would say comfortably, probably 98% of things would likely be addressed by the council in a closed session.
In a closed
Again,
session.
depends on what are they grieving. Also in statute does kind of leave it up to the individual. Is in theory they could say, well, I want to do it in open session.
Which is fine, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Most, I don't know
Yeah.
many individuals that would want to do it in open
Right.
session.
Right, I'm
But
thinking of
without
an
knowing like
individual.
specific scenarios, my guess is the vast, like 98% of these situations is gonna be handled in a closed session, likely with the city attorney present.
If it was a closed session, I feel more comfortable with it going to full council. If it was
Yeah.
if
If it
it
was an
had to be
open session every time.
I don't know
nobody
of
would
many personnel
bring it
issues like
forward.
this that are conducted in open session unless the employee actually requested that it be conducted in open session.
Which is fine, and that's their right to do so. So if it would be a closed session, then I believe skipping step 2 would be an allowable
Yeah,
venture for us. Option A.
yeah. I'm good with that.
So I'll make a motion to approve option A in amending the personnel policy to skip step 2 in a grievance procedure.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we move on to the resolution 08-2024, 10D. We moved off of, or we added to the agenda tonight.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, so member of council, again, this is a resolution that came from a request from Ideal Township. They're seeking some, specifically, to apply for a Sourcewell's Community Impact Fund. That's actually the same funding that we got, in 2022 for our visual reality de-escalation system. So they're looking at getting that impact funding, to improve the transfer station. So they're just simply asking, that you would adopt this resolution that says we support that.
So move resolution 08, 2024.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. That was the fastest approval in a second. All right, some old business.
We have no old business, Madam Mayor.
Awesome. Staff reports.
I think pretty short tonight. We just want to let you know, we sent it out to earlier this evening, but the first edition of the Breezy Beef e-newsletter has been published. So that covers, again, how that's doing is, it's a February edition, it covers the month previous. So there's pieces in there from every department on their activities for the month of January. That is, Assistant City Administrator Ike got the page on the website up. And then we'll be probably posting about it tomorrow. Yep, putting it out there. Again, it's on the website already, but we already made a social media post today, so we'll be making one tomorrow, letting the public know that it's out there formally. But that is out there. Was there anything else, Daniel? I don't think there was anything else. I think that's all I had, unless Joe or Chief Sandell have anything.
All right.
Oh, the last thing, that was, we also wanted to let you know, get the public out there that the Parks Committee meeting for February 8th of this week at 5 p.m. has been canceled. We had a number of committee members said that they would not be present. And we're down to the point where if one more person dropped, we wouldn't have a quorum. And then in addition to the significant issues that are being discussed, the important issues, the master plan, and then the disc
chair.
golf court directives, they have to elect a chair. It was decided to cancel that meeting and move it to March when they'll actually be able to be present. So that was the only decision. Well, the only other thing was that Parks meeting has been canceled.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have anything? No, we're not really doing. All right, the agenda forecast.
Yes, Madam Mayor. So workshop for February, we did put out a poll, and for those that responded, Tuesday the 20th worked for everybody who responded. And so the agenda for that, we just wanted to go over what we're looking at talking about is golf cart rules. We talked that before. We want to talk about some communications again, just a little bit. Talk about, really this communications item is really talking about kind of our communications, what's the word, not only the policy, but our vision or how we do communications, talk about like some of the statistics, especially that was sent to you as part of the packet. And then following your discussion that you had in January about, the council playing a little more role in the development of the agenda, what we're going to start doing is at the end of each workshops, again, this will be later in the month, so we'll be able to have a better picture of what the agenda looks like for the March meeting, is to just walk through the agenda for the regular March meeting. So if there's anything else that the council would like to discuss or feels we need to put on here. Originally, we did talk about having Baker Tilly here to talk about financing, but considering that we're still looking at different options, we felt appropriate to move that to kind of a workshop once the direction has been decided. So,
Right.
I think this could maybe go on a later agenda for a different workshop, but just circling back on like Sandy's presentation, I mean, I would like to at least have some discussion on that at some point. Doesn't have to be at this February meeting, because we might have enough on there that I don't think we want to extend out the time, and I think we do have time to talk about that, but I would like to get that on a workshop agenda at some point, just so we can give her the time that, she came and did the presentation. I would like to have some discussion on it.
I'm fine with discussing it, but it has been something sourced at Parks. So I was kind of waiting for Parks to make the determination of, is this a Parks thing or if it's a single resident ran thing?
I agree with Michael. I mean, we have to let Parks and Rec, I mean, they're working on their plan, and it's part of the plan, and to jump it over and take funds that have been allocated to Parks and Rec. I mean, I support it, but it's just the process and the protocol needs to be followed. Or otherwise, why do we have the plan, the master plan for Parks and Rec?
Just a question about what she was asking about and location and things like that. I mean, is that something you want Parks to decide all
That's
of
something that
those
they've been
things?
talking about. They had a good presentation. Joe put together analytics of how much it's going to be to establish, to run, to do things. They had a great discussion, and it was probably March of last year, I think, that discussion happened. Maybe it was April. And at that time, Park said, this is great, but we need to finish our master plan, decide what we're going to put in the master plan, then do the capital improvement plan to figure out which things get priority from their budget of what to move forward with next. And so that's where they've been working, is the master plan.
When is that to be done?
so the master plan, they do have the committee has been provided the final draft of the plan. I think at this point, their plan is to kind of, at their January meeting, they went through page by page. They had a draft. They went page by page again, gave Assistant Minister Ike a number of things they want to change. He's made those. They have that back before them. Next time they meet, they'll bless that final draft. I believe they'd like to hold an open house on that to invite the public to come in and discuss it and give feedback on it. And then at that point, if there's any changes that need to be made based off of that, make those and then send that to the council for approval.
Well, I feel like I don't think that just because, the community garden doesn't have to work within the $50,000 constraint of what we gave them, because there is still a lot of opportunity for her to go fundraise and to build support for it and do all these things. And so I feel like, yes, it should come out of Parks, but if you have someone spearheading it that's willing, I'm also working with the women's group to see where the interest is there for some of these things, but I do feel like, it doesn't necessarily have to be 1, 2, 3, from the master plan, especially if someone's going to go and raise funds, right? So I think there's, room for her to start gaining that support and looking at those funding options. So I don't know if it's completely solely based on, again, the constraints of $50,000 that we gave them that they have to work within if there's multiple projects they want to work on.
I'll apologize, and it really didn't have to do with the budget, but it has to deal with, is it something that Parks wants to deal with? Because it's almost like, okay, some resident comes in and says, I want to spearhead pickleball. Do we say, Parks, you no longer need to worry about it, we're going to let somebody else do it?
No, that's not really what I
Setting
meant.
the precedent.
That's what we're talking about. There's an item that has been in front of Parks, a personal resident's very passionate about, and it's a great plan. There's no discount about it. But if it's started in Parks and they've not said, no, we don't want to deal with it, then a personal can come forward and ask. But if it's in Parks and it's in their master plan and it's going to be in their capital improvement plan, I don't know if it's in our privy to approve it before the Parks has really blessed it.
Well, and that's not where I was kind of going with that. It's been drug out for so long, and so it's more of when when do we give, kind of that, again, to go start garnering the support and the funds outside of it? I don't know, I guess it's,
If the Parks Committee made a recommendation to the council to say, hey, can you please allow Sandy to start doing this, I'd feel more at ease. But again,
And is she clear on that direction? I
don't think she
I know
is,
that
actually.
maybe you're understanding
Yeah, I was gonna
that.
say, I don't think
I'm
she
sorry,
is.
my memory would probably have to be refreshed on what happened that long ago, but I mean.
because they keep telling her that it has to come from council too. Like, I've also heard that, council has to, it has to come down from council for us to work on it. Well, that's what I've been told, right?
the request from the parks.
Yeah,
We
request,
haven't
but
received a request
we
from
have-
the parks at this point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I think that we should make that, known to her, like, hey, here's the process to get going on this.
To Councilmember Maroney's comment, they did consider it in March of '23, we're in 2024, and that's when they made a formal vote to consider it as part of the master plan and the capital improvement plan. It then got brought up at a subsequent meeting later in the summer, and they reaffirmed that decision we'll take it up as part of the, once the master plan is done and the capital improvement plan will determine where in the priorities list it's at. So it has come to them multiple times, and they've said, we're not saying no, we just want to get our master plan, our vision, and figure out where it fits. It might as well be the top first item on the list. They're just going, we haven't decided that yet. We want to look at what is everything that we want to see for our parks before we decide what is the top priority and what's the first thing we want to come to council
You
asking
said
for.
March? When did you say that would be presented to us?
No, they discussed it in March of '23 and then at a subsequent meeting.
When are we gonna see the plan? I'm sorry, what?
When they decide that this is the first item.
Okay.
So that's the thing. That's where the thing is. Parks has discussed this, and that's what I think Councilman Maroney was trying to say. Like, they've multiple times it's been brought up, and they formally had a formal vote in March. They reaffirmed it at a later month. I want to say June or July. Don't quote me on that. I'd have to go look at the minutes. And it is in the draft of the master plan. So the next step would be after the master plan is adopted, then going, okay, what projects do we want to start? What is our priority one project? Developing that plan and bringing it forward to council.
Thank you. But that kind of just brings back some of the discussion about like understanding what the Parks Committee is doing, and some of the communication that we've been trying to like develop in the last few months is like, I don't want to not be doing something that, we're being asked, like, consider doing this, but it's in Parks Court, so we could tell somebody like Sandy, like, we can't do anything with it right now. You have to wait for Parks to make a decision.
And
That's
what I want to say you can't. You can again, at the end of the day, it's always the council's decision. So if the council wants to say, Parks, we actually like the community garden, we want you to start working on it right now, you have the right to do that.
Well, and that's kind of what I was getting at, so,
What kind of message does that send to Parks?
No, and I understand that. I just wanted to know what the timeline is, because I feel like Sandy hasn't had really clear direction to, as far as, just from what you nodded, Councilman Scott, I don't know if you've talked to her about the garden at all, but I don't think she knows that we aren't doing that, I guess. That we're not gonna.
That's fine because we want Parks to make these decisions, but then at least we can communicate with the resident and say, like, this is the path that,
Yeah.
continue revisiting it in Parks, or the ultimate decision has to come from Parks at this point, because that's the direction we've given them.
Okay. I can have that conversation with her, so she knows that's.
Because I don't want her to feel like she's come here and.
Yeah,
talked
that's
to
how
us
that's what I didn't
we're not
want,
doing
yeah.
anything with it, because she did bring up that she was here previously.
Yes,
And
yes.
we had these discussions, so I'm just trying to be responsive to those needs.
Yes, I know what you're saying, because I feel the same way, so.
Yeah, I would just echo that if she gets the Parks and Rec Committee to essentially ask her to spearhead it and discuss with us without having it be in the capital improvement plan, and we want to expense it out, not out of Parks funds, we can do that. But if it's going to come from Parks funds, It should be something that Parks is deciding that that's what their funds want to be used
Because the
for.
prioritization is for funds that they have, right?
Yeah, so.
Funding
So,
projects.
well, yeah, so it's funding
Half-time
priorities. It's what,
Yeah, I mean-
you know, I can't do everything, so what is what project to them is the number one, number two, number three, developing the plan and then going to council, okay, here's a number one project, here's our plan, our full plan, here's our estimated budget. We're asking you to then allocate the funds to do this project.
But if she can go and raise funds herself, right, like, which is what other communities have done, so it's not necessarily pulling out of that 50,000, then that should be looked at in tandem with the other projects. It's not necessarily like, oh, this project first, then this one, then this one. If there's someone that could spearhead multiple projects, you know, and raise funds for some of these things, then they should work on multiple projects. That's my,
And that's why I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying, Parks has discussed it. Parks has made motions on it twice to say, we're not going to work on the project right now. We want to finish the master plan and do the CIP. So if the council wants them to veer on that and actually make some direction on it, you'll have to direct them to do that, because as a body, they have voted multiple times and said, we are going to do this process first.
okay. All right,
Yep, nope, that's helpful, thank you.
all right, so do I have a motion to adjourn to February 20th?
So move.
Second?
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.